3, 2, 1. Today's podcast is presented by PODGO. PODGO is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from PODGO. We recently joined as a member and you can too. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co. Don't forget to add the 2-on-1 podcast in the How Did You Hear About PODGO section of your application. Now get ready for the rest of the episode. Daniel, how's it going?
You know what? I'm good, man. Great Sunday morning or afternoon, but I'm
Or
feeling
evening
good.
or night.
Evening. We don't know. We don't know when people are watching this or listening to this.
Exactly. If you're watching this on YouTube, which if you're not, you should most definitely watch it on YouTube. You notice that there's just two of us. Adam is going to be back eventually.
He will.
He brought it up last episode. If you haven't listened to it, you should go back and listen to that episode too. So you're just going to be stuck with Daniel and I for the next month.
It's the one-on-one podcast for now.
It's the one-on-one podcast. Should we get started? We have so much to talk about today.
There's a lot. I never realized since Wednesday how many things happened in the NHL.
I started writing things down throughout the week. I think I started writing on Thursday, and I checked last night around headlines time. And I'm like, man, this is going to be a great episode. And there's Montreal things to talk about. And it's going to be so weird talking about Montreal.
Yeah, when it happened, I'm like, oh, man.
Without Adam.
Of all the things that happened with that, pretty crazy trade.
Yeah. We'll get to it. There's since Wednesday, there have been 4 awards announcements. Let's start with the Lady Byng, which Nathan MacKinnon won. What do you think about Nathan MacKinnon winning the Lady Byng trophy?
Yeah, we talked about before this award. It's like, what do we call it? The nice guy award?
Apparently it's a nice guy on the ice. We don't know if it's on and off the ice. We're kind of confused.
I don't know. Nathan, nice guy. Always has a nice smile. Promotes the Tim Hortons hockey cards that we always tend to buy. That's pretty true. Well. I think he deserves it. But man, I don't know why. For me, in my heart, I wanted Austin Matthews to win it. Simply because the guy needs another award in his trophy case.
Yeah.
I think so. Just to solidify him a little more for me. Just to people can stop saying he's overrated because he's winning the awards.
I feel like the Leafs fan in me wants to give Austin Matthews the award. But then I think about what happened back in the summer or last summer. I guess. Yeah. I just realized we're in the fall of 2020. Mm-hmm. And it's man, it's so hard justifying giving him that award based on the description. And I know there was a couple people who did come out afterwards and say, I left him off my ballot because of that. And I think it's fair. I think it's justifiable. It's very recent, and I think we talked about it when it happened, that now it's up to Matthews to prove to everyone else that was a one-time incident. And I hate the idea that it's going to linger over him his entire career.
Yeah.
But I look at, Ryan O'Reilly was a finalist this year, and I think he might have won it last year, or he was a finalist last year as well. Mm-hmm. And he had his incident as well, so I think Matthews has to prove it to us that he's changed or moved on from that incident.
Yeah, it's fine balance between, I guess, actual game on the ice and how they live their lives. But we still love Austin.
Exactly.
Kind of a stupid thing he did, but all in all, we'll move forward with that.
The next award, the one that we all predicted clearly, Sean Couturier has won the Selke.
He finally did it, my boy.
Did he deserve the Selke?
I think so.
Well, you
I
made
don't
the
know.
argument. You made the
Yes.
argument when we did our awards show that he had done enough uh, to beat out Patrice Bergeron, and I think was Ryan O'Reilly up for this award too.
Yes, I believe so.
He beat out both those guys.
Both quality two-way guys. I think I think it was his time to win it. He's finally like what year 3 or 4 of his this dominant prime he's been having that, and he's really been the anchor for the Flyers on both ends of the ice. I think,
Except in the playoffs.
except in the playoffs. Just I mean that's like you could pick any Flyers like that. To be
That's
honest,
true. That is very, very true. What explain it to me again. What was that step he took? Because I feel like when we look at Patrice, Adam puts it that he is that line in terms of his two-way game because he's so important. You take Patrice out, you take Bergeron out, and it changes so much for that line. What about Sean Couturier?
I think for me personally, like the way their top six is built, you take away Couturier, you kind of take out like a huge chunk at the same time. Like they don't have that perfect line like the Bruins, or they don't have lineups that kind of like go like that follow that first line. It's kind of like the Flyers are not as built the same way. I personally think quality wise or consistency wise that you take someone who has been a consistent person like Couturier, and it changes a lot of things as well. Like we've talked about, assessing Claude Giroux, like what does he bring to a team now, or is he no longer that like focal point guy that you kind of look at? For me personally, I think that is Sean Couturier,
Right.
and
Right.
I think the trophy kind of like I think for me personally, it speaks to itself this year that he deserved it, and he was a big part of that Flyers team that made that incredible run, and made it pretty far in the playoffs.
Can we talk about why Mark Stone was not in the top three?
I don't know why it wasn't like.
He finished fifth in voting.
Yeah.
I believe it was Couturier, Bergeron, O'Reilly, Cirelli, and Mark Stone. Why can't we give wingers the credit they especially this winger, because he's probably the best two-way winger.
Mm-hmm.
I'd make the argument he's the best two-way winger or defensive winger in the league. And yes, Anthony Cirelli. And if you ask Jeff Merrick, Anthony Cirelli should have won the Selke.
I
But
know in
I
terms of
think
you're saying in terms of like pure defensive centers, defensive forwards.
sure, but I think I would put Mark Stone and maybe his recent games in the playoffs might have not shown that, but in the regular season,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's over Cirelli, and I think he's over O'Reilly, and I think the finalists should have been Stone, Couturier, and Bergeron.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I'm a huge Mark Stone fan. I think I was looking through past winners, and I don't know when has the center bias like when has it happened? Like I remember looking back, Sergei Fedorov when he was on the Red Wings, he won it as a winger, and I think about that where I'm like, yeah, that has happened before. No one kind of batted an eye. Now it's just like it has to be a center, but I completely agree that Mark Stone should have made it. He, here and there, like he had his moments in the playoffs, but man, the way he's been playing, like all those like gifts they've been showing him, like he just takes away the puck
Yeah,
without any hesitation,
none.
continues the play anywhere on the ice. Like he's just like the all around guy that I think personally he should have won it.
Yeah. Second to last award so far, the Jack Adams, and unfortunately, my boy Alain Vigneault did not win
No,
the Jack Adams. It turned out to be Bruce Cassidy who led his team to a President's Trophy and a second round exit in the playoffs.
I think it's one of those things like, all right, he got it, well deserved.
Well, it's
Not
it's
not much
interesting.
fanfare there.
It's interesting that it's finally the team who was really good. The
Yeah,
coach got it. Like last year, it was the Islanders. It was Barry Trotz got it,
hmm
and Did Barry Trotz get it last year or 2 years ago?
I cannot remember, to
Because
be
it's so
honest.
weird to
Yeah.
think about John Cooper not winning the Jack Adams and having one of the best teams to ever touch the ice.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I was rooting for John Tortorella this year. Like,
Yeah.
that Columbus team was something else with the amount of losses they took
Yeah.
and still managed to make a competent team. So, yeah, it was kind of weird. Like, Bruce Cassidy just, I don't know. It's the kind of thing where, like, man, you hate to see the Bruins win, and then for them to also win this is just,
I hate to see any team in Boston win. Okay.
consolation prize, I think, for them for losing to the Lightning. But what I kind of see it as
Oh.
is, it just makes that team work. I think we've mentioned before that bottom six, that it just works for them so well. But I see myself putting that on any other team, and I don't see it working in the same way. Like, I I forget sometimes how this team would make like a Matt Grizzlick look so good, or Joakim Nordstrom kind of player, where these guys where I don't
Our
see them.
Lindholm,
Yes, I don't see them. Oh, Leafs great,
Leaf
Harlan
legend.
home. Yes, that I don't really see these guys, on paper working, but it's just the on ice production has been like great what he's been able to get out of them.
It
Or
works with that team.
yeah, or Charlie Coyle, where it's a guy where he might not be your top scorer, but he's just so perfect in that lineup.
Right. We have to do this last award. Forget Kyle Dubas. You have to bring back Lou Lamoriello. Okay?
I
That's
know.
what it is. Lou Lamoriello won the Jim Gregory GM of the Year award for I don't know what.
I don't know. Like, he added.
Okay, listen. I'll give him credit. He added PODGO. He added Andy Green.
hmm
What else?
I'm looking at
Semyon Varlamov. How could I
NHL
forget about that?
TradeTracker.com, and
Yeah,
I know. Remember, he acquired Matt Martin.
but that
He
was
got
last year.
yeah, he got Jordan Schmaltz from the Leafs, or Matt Laredo.
Was that this year?
This was this year, February
Oh,
24th, same day as the Pajot trade.
that seems like a long, long time ago.
Yeah,
But it's still like, okay, he added three. He added three guys.
I think it's in a way too, like what he gets out of the guys. Like with Lou on the Leafs, he didn't really have, I guess, that freedom or that time to kind of establish his own signature on the team. I think.
I don't know. I don't
I
know
mean, the
if
Marlowe
I don't know
thing.
if I don't know if I necessarily say that, because I think you look at what happened with how the team changed when Lou left and Dubas came in and the tweaks that were made.
hmm
I think, okay, maybe he didn't have his team solidified, but you bring in Marlowe, you sign Zaitsev to 7 years, you have Matt Martin, you have Leo Komarov, you still have Roman Polak. Like, I think he had his guy, like he had the guys that he liked on the team there,
Yeah.
and I think it meshed with the way Mike Babcock coached.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that too. Like, I think
But
with the
yeah,
Islanders, it's for me, it's a bit of like a throwback to his New Jersey days. Like, I remember like getting to know more of like Lou as like became an older fan. Is like he always demands loyalty
yeah,
in a way, and the way I see it, like we always laugh about it, but like the Andy Green trade, that's just it's his old time captain from New Jersey,
the Zach
or
Parise almost getting traded to the Islanders.
yeah, and the other guys he's been like kind of keeping around, getting the most out of, like the Brock Nelson, the Anders
Yeah,
Lee, the Josh Bailey, these kind of guys where these are the longtime guys that you say like let's try to find a fit for you, or not biting the Matt Barzell kind of extension kind of thing. It just just
right.
didn't give him the money right away.
I think the thing with Lou joining the Islanders is that you look at that team when he joined the Islanders, and it already felt partially like Lou's team. They already had, like, they already had their bigger guys. They had more. They didn't have they had, well, Matt Barzal is a star, but they didn't have a superstar. They had stars and really good pieces around that star. And I feel like
hmm
that's Lou. Because his teams were they were filled with depth in a way. You look at those New Jersey teams,
Yeah.
right? And I think what he did this year is add to that, to the team that already felt like Lou's team, or to me at least, it felt like Lou's team.
Yeah, like I feel he was like I completely agree where he's more in his element now with this team that and he's a guy like like the diamond in the rough kind of thing where he gives these guys chances like ever since he's come in like Scott Mayfield, Adam Pellick, these guys have really developed into true AHLers. Nick Leddy keeps being Nick Leddy, but
Johnny Boychuk.
Johnny Boychuk, yeah, and then he still makes it work with like the Casey Zizekas, Matt Martin, Cal Clutterbuck. Like that is such a throwback line that I didn't expect to work or be so effective, even in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
despite Cal Clutterbuck's like injuries and everything, but like he still managed to kind of keep that line rolling, which is really amazing to me.
For sure. Let's get to some. We'll call it good news because I do think that what this is good news. The NHL is pushing for an 82 game season now. Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly was on the Two Man Advantage podcast with Scott Burnside and Pierre LeBrun, and there are a couple things that came out were, number one is that we're probably not going to see a December 1st start. And the NHL still has a preference of playing 82 games, and they're not necessarily sold on the bubble model for that full 82 game season. And last night on headlines, something that I said I wouldn't be surprised if the NHL does is look at that NFL model. And literally just before we started the podcast, apparently no positive cases in the NFL leading up to week one.
Mm-hmm. Which is really
What
good
do you
to
think
hear.
of two things? What do you think of the NHL wanting to play 82 games next for the 2021 season, considering the circumstances, and bubble or no bubble for next season?
Mm-hmm. I guess like if they do agree to do the 82 season, I don't know. I kept thinking of the expanded rosters kind of method where there might be a lot more back to backs with the condensed season where maybe teams will actually have three goalies.
Right.
They have their starter and they have like two backups that like maybe like the New York Rangers approach in a way that they might have to kind of do that depending on how close the games are. I think you're going to see more shuffling in lineups depending on how fatigued guys get. You're going to see more of that depth come out from the system.
Right.
And in terms of not doing the bubble, I'm gonna say I'm gonna do the cop out kind of way and say we'll see
Right.
how things go because I know like the NFL has a pretty solid plan, but then I look at like the MLB right now where they've really rooted out the cases, like they've been pretty effective with testing,
Yeah.
but there's still these instances that come up. Like I think yesterday there was one person in the San Francisco Giants organization who tested positive, and then they had to cancel all the weekend games.
Right. Right. I think for me, the one thing with not having the bubble, I think I would be okay with it in terms of, hey, these are the rules that we've set. If you don't follow the rules, you're going to be punished, whether that means you have to quarantine for this amount of days and you have to test negative for this amount of days, or you get kicked out. I don't know what the rules are in terms of the specifics in the NFL and the MLB. I know earlier on, towards the beginning around spring, whenever spring training was, I guess it's summer training. It's summer
Yeah,
training.
summer training.
They did say, hey, you guys can go home. Like they weren't following the rules. And I think if that's the method that works, I think it'll be fine. I don't necessarily think in Canada we're going to see fans in the arena. I know they're testing that out in the US at the moment in a couple stadiums. I don't know if that's going to be the case in Canada. And another thing that might happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the case, are we going to see Canadian NHL teams have to find home bases in the US because the Canadian government isn't going to allow that travel? And the reason I bring that up is because in the MLS, what they did is they started with the Canadian teams. Okay, you guys all go to Canada. You're going to play each other. So those games are out of the way. And then you're going to come to and what it seems like at the moment is they're going to go to the US, find a home base, and that's going to be it. Is that something you see happening?
Yeah, I remember like reading was Toronto FC is going to Connecticut, I believe. Yeah.
I think so.
I honestly, in terms of like, isolation and the amount of time given and, getting the games out of the way, I think that's a perfect idea. I think the NHL can do that as well, where, the Leafs do their whole, Battle of Ontario and against the Habs and then against the Jets and like here and there and, get those games out of the schedule, get them done, and then, get them back into the US. But
right.
I think it's also kind of gauging too. Like, I'm just thinking, man, like this is a lot of playing. This is a lot of like being away from their families. And I understand that like it is their job and everything, but man, that is going to be, it's tiring for me to like, I'm not even a player, but like just it's tiring to think about that kind of rigid schedule where it can work though.
It can. And I think you brought up the a lot of playing issue, and listen, like these guys want to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I really think that in my opinion, and I brought it up on the podcast multiple times, is that I think that's going to backfire on them because they're going to play 82 games in January. They're going to start, let's say they're starting around January. An 82-game season plus the playoffs brings them to where? It brings them into the summer for sure. And then they're going to start again the 2021-2022 season. And then they have the Olympics at the beginning of 2022.
That's a lot. Yeah. It's
like that's a lot of games.
I think, I don't know. It's just, I guess a lot of players, like it's just that there's that willingness to kind of be like, we got to do this in a way, which is, it's funny. It's a huge contrast from like, USA basketball where, you had so many guys withdraw from the Olympics. It's so different with the NHL when it comes to like these countries, these guys wanting to represent them. And I think there's that hunger now where they didn't get to go to Pyeongchang. And, I think someone like, a Sidney Crosby is like, he's going to miss his opportunity to do this at least one more time. Or Steven Stamkos, he's like, I want to make my debut if he makes the team.
If number one, if he makes the team, and number two, if he's healthy, I think he'll make the team. I think it's a matter of if he's healthy. Yeah, it's definitely, I guess it's something we're going to see over time, develop over time. Are they going to do the bubble? Are they not going to do the bubble? Like, let's remember, like, back in June, they didn't even tell us where the bubbles were until like 2 weeks before, which was like the bare minimum for them to set up the bubbles.
That was funny. I remember we were both predicting Columbus, Pittsburgh.
Well, we were picking, like, let's be honest, we were picking smaller cities because
Vegas.
And Vegas. Apparently, I don't know why they were so gung ho on having it in Vegas. I don't understand why, but okay, that's fine. We'll see what happens. I think they're going to watch the NFL. I bet they've been watching the MLB, and I think over time it's going to progress. Something I heard on TSN's Insider Trading with LeBrun and Darren Dreger is Hockey Canada looking at the Edmonton bubble for the World Juniors. So I'm guessing that the World Juniors for would it be 2021?
Yeah, 2021.
Juniors.
Yeah.
Was going to be in Canada.
It was it was supposed to be on the West Coast.
So I guess it seems like Edmonton, they've done the bubble. All these leagues will be playing. Like the CHL is going to start. The European leagues are starting, or some of them are.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about the bubble? Because I think that's thinking about these guys are coming from different places. Like I think they're coming from Canada, they're coming from Europe. For me, it seems a little bit worrying in terms of you're going to put all these people into a bubble, and I understand you're going to test them. And we already saw it with the NHL bubble that, hey, listen, like guys were coming back from Europe, guys were coming from the US, guys were coming from different cities in Canada. They were tested, and it's worked out perfectly as of now. But are you still a little bit worried about this idea of them coming from all over the world?
I think so. We already passed the August phase where, this typically when the World Junior the training camps start. They haven't had any of that. I think if they're gonna try to do this, first of all, they're gonna do the training camps, and they're gonna have the arrival of all the players be as early as possible before a start date, so people can quarantine. They could make sure that they test everybody. But I think, yeah, like the protocols have to be there. I think it's a bit worrisome now that we're already into like almost mid-September, and they want the World Juniors to happen, but I don't know how they're gonna kind of gauge like we're gonna do the tryouts now, because you can't do it the same way. And I don't know if they're just gonna pick guys now based on merit or based on like performance in these leagues. I know like some countries kind of have to do that, but I'm looking at like like Finland, Sweden, US, and Canada. Like these are those juggernaut teams that they have so much talent that I don't know how they're gonna assess in a safe way how they're gonna gauge their talent for this tournament.
Right. It's going to be most definitely going to be an interesting process of how they're going to get to that decision, because let's look at let's look at Sweden. Like they're taking players from different teams, and I understand that they're playing, but you're going to say, okay, come to this tryout, and then they're going to go back to their team.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't make the team, right? So yeah.
It's an odd concept, but listen, I think they'll figure it out. I think we're at a completely different understanding of how to do things back, that like completely different than if we looked at back in March when we were still doing the podcast, absolutely confused at what the hell was going on in the world. The NHL has done a bubble. The MLS has done a bubble. The NBA is doing a bubble. NFL and MLB are doing whatever, like they're still traveling. The Premier League, the Bundesliga, all these leagues have been doing their own thing. And I think they're all going to pick and choose from each other, and we'll get some, like leagues are still playing, right? So it'll be interesting to see what the World Juniors does in terms of that.
I was concerned about that, to be honest. I remember I was thinking like, oh no, this is the year I'm not going to watch it for the first time. I mean, safety first, but yeah, it's something that, I just hold so special with me, or mention it too many times on the show for it to not happen.
Well, speaking of, sorry. There's a couple, there's one guy who is leaving his team, which is so upsetting. Haley Salvian from The Athletic broke that Mark Borowiecki is set to test the waters of free agency for the first time in his career.
It's kind of shocked me, because I remember everyone on Twitter was saying like he's the next captain.
Eugene, Pierre, stop letting this guy. Don't let this guy leave. Don't let this guy leave. To me, it makes zero sense, and for a couple reasons. Number one, you have the cap space. Who cares? And I understand Eugene doesn't like to spend money, but how much are you possibly paying Mark Borowiecki?
Like 1.5, 2 million.
Let's give him $2 million because he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And so you have loads of cap space, and you have to hit the floor. You have to hit the floor, the minimum. Number two, this is a guy you want to have in your locker room. This seems like the perfect guy. He seems like a nice guy. Boro cop. He stopped was it the robbery? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Like he seems like a leader in that locker room, especially for a team who goes through ups and downs and goes through off ice things all the time. You need someone You need a strong presence in that locker room, and I really think that he fits that mold perfectly.
Yeah, like he has been a veteran guy, I think, for that team where a lot of the young guys that Ottawa is developing right now, they've become familiar with him. He's been a guy around the locker room that's kind of have had that positive effect, that you would want with a team that's rebuilding. And to see the fact that he has to test free agency and it's already been said out there is it's pretty disappointing because I've seen him as a fixture with the Sens. I've seen him as a guy where he's not necessarily gonna he's not gonna be your top end guy, but he's a guy where I'm looking at someone like Eric Brandstrom who could really learn a lot from this guy from Mark Borowiecki.
And I understand this guy is much better than Mark Borowiecki, but someone like Thomas Chabot,
yeah,
like he can the leadership quality that I think Borowiecki has, that he can teach Thomas Chabot. Like, let's be honest, Thomas Chabot is all but the next captain for this team. And you could talk about Brady Tkachuk, but I really think Thomas Chabot is
probably should be, yeah,
the captain of the Ottawa Senators, whether you like it or not. Now, I have to bring this up, but someone wrote an article saying, forget Pietrangelo. The Leafs should sign Mark Borowiecki.
I'd love that. I'd actually love that signing.
I
remember there's the Radek Gudas. I remember there's the Radek Gudas argument, but I don't know.
Listen, where the hell is he going to play? The left side is full. And if he – listen, and I'm not the guy who says you have to have a guy who's left-handed on the left and right-handed on the right. I'm like, if you can play on the right properly and you're left-handed, go ahead. I don't care. Just I need someone to play on the right.
Just tell him, listen, Mark, no matter what, you're on the right.
Yeah, like, is he going to be another Ron Hainsey? Is that what this is going to be?
I don't know. I mean, it worked pretty well. It worked out, like, okay.
I mean, he was great. I don't know if great. He was good in his own end.
He did what he needed to do.
Anything else, it was a stretch.
Yeah.
It was. Listen, if he can play on the right side, I'm more than happy to bring him in. If not, I don't think it necessarily makes sense for the team because you have Riley, you have Muzzin, you have Dermott, you have Sandin, you have Lettinen.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's all those other guys who I'd rather play on the left side over Mark Borowiecki, right? Whereas the right side you have a little more room to work with. What teams do you think go after Mark Borowiecki?
I think teams like the Ottawa Senators, to be honest. Teams that need grit.
Yeah.
And they need a guy that helps their young guys, like, maybe being a defender on the ice for them or just being that positive voice in the locker room. And I'm looking at the Detroit Red Wings, that they have so many guys coming up. They have a couple draft picks they're going to have this year, and they're not going to contend. Like, there's no way to contend, unless at all. But he's a guy where they could probably pay him like the $3 million or something just to get him on the team to say, be a leader here. Or, depending on where he kind of sees himself now, I think he could go to contender as well. There's a lot of teams that are going to need that sandpaper. He skates pretty well for bottom pairing guy. I don't see on the Leafs, to be honest. I feel more Vancouver for some reason than the Leafs.
There's a couple teams in the Atlantic Division who I have a feeling would be in on a guy like Mark Borowiecki.
If he goes to the Bruins, and I'm like, oh, this is such a...
The Bruins and the Lightning.
Yeah.
They're going to be in a cap crunch. Especially the Lightning. You look at, they still have to re-sign Cirelli. They have to re-sign Sergachev. Like, this isn't going to be a cheap off season for them. And we've already talked about they're probably going to have to get rid of a guy or two. And, you never know, like that guy. It's not Mark Borowiecki. The only team that is going to overspend to bring him in would be the Ottawa Senators, just because they have to hit the floor. But I think most other teams would say, hey, come, maybe not league min, but 950. And Boston's could potentially lose Chara, and they could potentially lose Krug. And I made the argument that I wouldn't be surprised if they go after OEL. I don't know how they do it, but I wouldn't be surprised. But Mark Borowiecki, I guess, to fill out the bottom pair, I don't know.
Yeah,
it just seems like that's the type of guy that works in the depths of Boston.
it's funny. It's like I think it was the same thing we said about Dustin Buffalo. It's a guy you'd love to see on a team you like the Leafs, but that like it's also a kind of guy who fits the mold of the Bruins, which you don't like to see.
No, I don't like to see it because it makes them better.
It's like I don't know. It's a guy that will help you defend against the Bruins, but at the same time, he's like cut from the same cloth as the Bruins.
Yeah, unfortunately. I brought this up before about paying guys, and it's the NHL is about to enter a very difficult time for a lot of their teams. And Frank Saravelli, had reported at least 17 NHL franchises have enacted pay cuts that include GMs, coaches, and hockey operations department staff. And these are the teams that he has listed: Anaheim, Buffalo, Calgary, Chicago, the Blue Jackets, Dallas, Edmonton, the Kings, Minnesota, Montreal, Nashville, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Vancouver, and Winnipeg. And I also read somewhere that there could be some owner changes coming in the NHL.
Just surprising that list Montreal is there, because I would consider them as I don't know. It's like I think of Adam. I think of like that's how the fans are. No matter what, they'll come in. It's like the Leaf fans. So that's surprising to see that they've had to have some revenue cuts there as well. A lot of teams. By the way, on that list.
It's a lot of teams, and I'm, Brian Brooks always brings this up that they set escrow to a limit of 20%. Mm-hmm. But he's like, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being like 40, because think about how much gate revenue is to the league. It's over 50%. It's over half of their hockey related revenue, and it's gonna be if they don't have any fans in the stands next season, it's going to be very difficult for some teams. And they're already talking about a list of teams who are going to be budget teams. And it's going to be a nightmare. I really think it's not going to be good for the league.
Not at all. I think that, even when times were good, you still had a lot of teams kind of struggling to kind of, meet that revenue that, if they weren't winning, then they weren't getting any revenue. And we talked about, those top teams that were kind of just helping these, I guess, quote unquote, lower revenue teams just trying to get by.
The five big teams?
Yeah, five big teams. And yeah, it's just upsetting because you kind of want the game, I think they're at a point where, that constant thing that we want the game to grow in these new markets. And you're taking a step back now, where teams you've listed are the ones that have to keep building up that fan base. Also, to Minnesota on that list, that's weird to me because they always keep saying that they're the state of hockey, and they have the university, like the NCAA, at like Minnesota Duluth, all like those type of like programs there. That it's surprising to me that they're losing this type of money.
It's a scary. It's a scary thought because we're talking about the cap being flat for a few years. Even if the cap goes up, 17 teams right now, revenues, all their revenue is gone. Like it's over 50% is gone right now for a lot of these teams, and really not looking like I think the leagues are pushing their start date a little bit every time, so that okay, we'll get fans then, and we don't know when there's gonna be fans in the seats.
Yeah.
And think about how bad the pandemic hit the economy. Like, even if in 3 years the salary cap goes up, who says that these teams are going to be cap teams? Like, I think this year was an anomaly. Like, it's not this year was an anomaly, because remember, there was like 15 or 17 teams who were $1.5 million within the cap. I cannot see that being the case within the next 5 years, because so many owners have been losing money. Like, I think we have to remember that these owners, yes, they run the hockey team, but they have things outside of hockey, and everything was shut down for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then started opening up. And think about the guys who own the hotels, the guys who are in restaurants, the guys who are in casinos. They've been closed. Like, they haven't been making money.
I just think of the revenue aspect of it too. Like, I remember I was talking to a few other fans. Like, this was at Ryerson, and I don't know. It was such a simple statement they told me, but it's something that's kind of the reality of the revenue. Like, the revenue aspect right now is just like, I'm not going to buy a jersey. I'm not going to buy a hat to sit at home and watch the game.
No, it's bigger. You're right. It's bigger than just having fans in the stands, because not having fans in the stands are going to affect other things. Concessions, jerseys, those programs.
Yeah.
All the league is getting right now, for the most part, is, yes, there's still some people buying jerseys. Of course, they're getting all the ad revenue and the TV deals. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting to see the future of hockey in terms of how it works economically. I think there's going to be some big changes.
There's just one thing I want to say. Yeah. It's just a simple blanket statement kind of thing, where I always mentioned with people is that I really hate the word bandwagon fan.
Yeah. Why?
Because I don't care if you're a bandwagon fan, quote unquote bandwagon fan. Like, do you want your team to relocate? Let there be those people that, jump on like the whole playoff run and everything, like, yeah, more revenue to the team. Like, I don't want another Atlanta Thrashers situation.
Yeah. Listen, we need all the bandwagon fans we can get right now.
Yes. It's just every time I think of that, or like when people kind of get into those arguments, we're like, oh, the bandwagons versus the true fans, at the end of the day, the jersey sale's still the same.
Yeah, I think from a business standpoint, who cares if you're a bandwagon or a true fan, as long as you're spending money? And then I think about it from a fan perspective.
Yeah.
This is just me. I hate bandwagon fans. I hate bandwagon fans because they think they're know-it-alls. I'm like, man, you have not been. And now I feel like I'm walking myself back.
Yeah, because you're a Leafs fan. You're like, you don't know the pain, guys.
That's the thing. At last episode, I go, listen, you don't need pain. Listen, you don't need pain to win. I'm more than happy for you to join the Leafs bandwagon. The more, the merrier. But when Marner has one bad game, or when Nylander has one bad game, don't hop on the bandwagon and say he should be traded.
Yeah, that's their NHL 20.
It's not
mentality coming in.
It's not NHL 20. It's not, you can't just find a trade. You actually have to work to make a trade, okay?
They don't understand, Alex, that when you looked at the lineup on the right side of Mitch Marner, you remember Michael Grabner and P.A. Parento.
I remember Clark MacArthur, yes. Nikolai Kulemin, Alexei Ponikarovsky. That's
how he used to live in our area. By the way,
Alexei Ponikarovsky.
he used to live in Vaughan. Yeah,
Oh my God.
I
Is he still in
remember.
Toronto?
I don't know. I think he might have come back, but I just remember that when I was growing up, like when I was a kid, that was a big deal that people would be like, "Oh, I'd see Alexei Ponegrovsky at like the grocery store or something, or I'd see him at like Finch Station or something." I don't know.
That is that's kind of funny that he's
Yeah.
still in Toronto. Should we move on to everyone's favorite team,
Okay.
the Edmonton Oilers?
I hear they got a top six guy.
Well, there's a couple things that
Okay.
we have to get to the Edmonton Oilers because they're looking to make some changes. And one guy they brought in, and listen, I know he's a depth guy, but I got to talk about it, is Adam Cracknell. And obviously, Daniel pointed out in our Google Doc that he's a Marlies legend.
Yes. Yeah, he was pretty good for that 1 year he was here.
Yeah. I just want to make the joke that he's going to be Connor McDavid's next winger. And
they're going to try it no matter what.
Yeah. And the Edmonton Oilers are going to pay him at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aware he was playing in Russia.
Yeah, he was playing for 1 year, I think, in the KHL. Yeah.
That I didn't realize.
I remember him from way back, like St. Louis days, and he's been quite the journeyman.
Yeah. Yes, he has. But let's get to like actual NHL player information. So let's stop talking about. Did Adam Cracknell play in the World Juniors?
I think for the U.S.
Oh, then it doesn't count. Then it doesn't count.
Okay.
Only if he plays for the Canadian
World
Juniors team. Friedman was on radio, I believe. It was WGR 550. Edmonton Oilers are looking at Darcy Kemper. He is a big target right now around the league. Later adds he'd help the Coyotes restock most of their lost picks. Oilers have also checked in on Matt Murray, Frederick Anderson, and others who might be around. And speaking of Matt Murray, the Oilers, and this is from Pierre LeBrun, the Oilers and Penguins have talked about Matt Murray. I'm told, but as far as I can tell, asking price is too rich for Edmonton at this point. Pierre puts first round pick ? In brackets. I think Edmonton will be patient in its goalie search, and the Oilers haven't ruled out bringing back Mike Smith either. So there is a lot to break down there. Let's start with why the hell would the Oilers bring back Mike Smith?
I don't know. Just I've heard before where he's a good locker room guy. He's the type of guy that he is a bit older now, but he's been a bit of a late bloomer. I remember he really went off in 2011, 2012, and yeah, I don't know. Just I don't know what they would do with that. Like this is this thing we just talk about every year with the Oilers that they're gonna try to fix the goaltending situation, and honestly, like I think that if you're gonna go with the core you have now, like you don't go for someone like Mike Smith or Mikko Koskinen now. You gotta, if you want to get better, you're gonna have to get something on the line. And I think Darcy Kemper kind of fits that for me. I don't know what the Coyotes are gonna think about what they want to do with the team right now, but in terms of someone that kind of shows that consistency and is a guy that he is right in his prime. He was a bit of a late bloomer too. Like I think he was a 2009 pick and he is someone that could be with that core long term. So I think the Oilers have to give something back, but
well, the Oilers have 14th overall, just below the Leafs, or just above the Leafs. Listen, Darcy Kemper has a contract extension already set, so you don't even have to deal with extending him, and so it's the next 2 years at 4.5. I'd say that is a pretty good deal considering how well Darcy Kemper has played for the last few years. But if you're like Ken Holland seemed pretty adamant on not wanting to give up that first round pick around the trade deadline. Now he does have to. One of the issues I had with Edmonton at the beginning of the year, and they proved me wrong in the regular season, but like the playoffs exposed it again is that they didn't have. I didn't think their goaltending was up to par. Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith, I'm sorry, that's not good enough for your team. Like, does it make more sense for them to make that trade for Darcy Kuemper or wait to see what the goalie market is?
That's a pretty interesting. I don't know. I think if Ken Holland is not willing to deal with that pick, I think you just keep it. But you kind of have to realize too that once you do that, they're gonna have to delve into their prospect pool. And a guy I'm kind of thinking of is like Raphael Lavoie, who is someone that he wasn't a top pick. He kind of dropped in the draft into the second round. He's someone that's pretty sought after. He had a solid junior season. He played for the World Juniors. He was better than where he was drafted in the second round, and he's someone that could kind of be a trade piece for them. I'm just thinking of that because of their last two first round picks. It was Philip Broberg and Evan Bouchard, and the way they are with their defense, I think those guys are kind of untouchable right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I wouldn't touch. Like, there's a few guys I think are untouchable other than the obvious two in McDavid and Draisaitl. Yeah. Like, I don't think you touch Broberg, Bouchard, or even someone, like Ethan Bear.
Yeah.
And he's an RFA. Don't touch Ethan Bear.
I think it's when we look at all of that, I just look at the roster now. I'm like, there's not really anything else we can give the Coyotes in a hypothetical trade because I don't know.
Yeah, it's
not much there.
The Coyotes are in a whole different ball game because they're in deep because of they're losing their draft picks and John Chaika leaving and still looking for a GM. Like, what the hell is going on?
I think they're going to really try to just recoup assets at this point.
And we talked about it. They're going to
rebuild. Not there. Yeah.
It seems like they're set for a rebuild. Before we move on, what goalie do you think the team goes after? The Edmonton Oilers. Yeah, okay. The Oilers.
I have this weird scenario where, because this happened a lot in baseball recently, where there's these top guys that people kind of hype up, and then they don't sign a contract until later into the offseason. So I'm just thinking of like a Manny Machado situation or like a Bryce Harper situation. Like, not guys of that magnitude, but guys that you kind of think has that big price tag. And I have a feeling like Braden Holtby's not going to break the bank with the way the cap is. I think he's going to wait. Okay. And I think a team like Edmonton will give him that contract, but not break the bank. He's gonna kind of realize he's not like a $7 or $8 million kind of guy, and gonna go with a reasonable contract.
Listen, if that Robin Lehner, and I know he's come out and denied it up until this point, the Robin Lehner deal that was looking at 5 years around just about $5 million, I think that changes the market in terms of Markstrom and Holtby. Like, I think Markstrom can still get more because Vancouver was riding Markstrom. But if I'm Braden Holtby and I see the Darcy Kuemper deal and I see the Robin Lehner deal, if it looks like that, I'm like, oh my God. Like, what do you do if you're Braden Holtby? You sign a 1-year deal and prove yourself, or do you say, hey, let's get that secured. Fine, we won't get as much money, but we'll get that security.
It's pretty interesting. I don't know. This reminds me of when Cody Franzen, who was a free agent, where, like, technically, like, we love Cody, but, like, he's not a top tier guy. But I remember going into free agency from the Nashville Predators after the Leafs trade that he was considered, like, I think the most sought after defenseman because he was a right hand. He was like right-handed, and he was a good offensive defenseman guy, and remember, he had to wait so long until like the Sabres eventually kind of gave him a contract, and it didn't turn out too well.
Because wasn't he looking? I remember he was looking for a hefty deal.
Yeah, and I think that's going to happen to Braden Holtby, where he's going to look for the hefty deal, and I think I agree with you. Like, he might have to take a prove yourself 1-year deal because that was disastrous last season. or this season.
It was very, very disastrous, especially the playoffs. Considering all the rumors and mumbo jumbo that's come out since then. I want to throw this idea your way. Now, Friedman's brought up multiple times. He believes the Calgary Flames are looking at defense options. They've looked at Ekman Larsson. Treliving used to work in Arizona, knows him very well. They've investigated Rasmus Ristolainen. I don't know if it's ever been close, but they've considered it. He then said, I do think the Calgary Flames are, at the very least, gouging interest on Johnny Gaudreau. They're going to be very careful with this one. I think they'll consider it, but they're determined to not be stupid. Now, the idea is, and is there a trade that works around Johnny Gaudreau for Oliver Ekman-Larsson? Now, I'm not saying one for one. Obviously, it's up for debate who's adding what. I think both teams end up adding something. But is there a deal there?
I think there'd be something there. I think the way the Coyotes kind of acquire guys is Gaudreau's kind of a name where it's the same thing we said with Phil Kessel, where he kind of goes there for the namesake. He technically has had his struggles, but they go there for a low market team that could advertise, hey, we got a star guy.
Yeah.
And, maybe it will work well for Johnny Gaudreau to go there. The criticism isn't there. He can kind of just work on his game. But at the same time, too, we look at Phil Kessel, where it completely imploded for him offensively when he went to the Coyotes.
And that's the thing. And I've been comparing Phil Kessel and Johnny Gaudreau, simply the type of player that they are. And I think I brought this up on the podcast before, that they're very similar in terms of Johnny Gaudreau isn't the guy. Now I think it's being known that Johnny Gaudreau's not the guy you build around, but he's a very good piece that you add to the puzzle.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Phil Kessel is. He did it in Pittsburgh, and right, you traded Phil Kessel, and yes, I understand he played third line wing, but he was a top 6 guy in Toronto, and it seems like he's a top 6 guy in Arizona too. It's just you bring in Phil Kessel and you're treating him. It feels like because Clint Keller didn't have, maybe he's having his sophomore slump, but you're trying to now build with Phil Kessel as a main guy, and that's just not his style.
This reminds me, I'm like Gaudreau kind of has a pretty solid cap hit. I think it's under $6 million.
Mm-hmm.
That
I think it's just that $6 million.
I had this crazy idea, but I know it will never work. Is when you thought of Malkin and Crosby and the puzzle, I'm like, hey, who's the next 1 and 2 punch like that? And I'm like, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I'm like, no way, Calgary makes that trade with them.
They make a trade with Edmonton for
Johnny.
We just talked about how Edmonton has no pieces to trade, and now we're talking about them trading for Johnny Gaudreau.
I think
where'd we go?
I think if you elevate the conversation away from, when they said they're not gonna deal a pick. I think if you're gonna get someone with, I guess, term and someone with a bit of security, you kind of delve in more into the higher end pieces of your prospect pool. And, if they feel that, a Broberg or a Bouchard they're going to pick one or the other, then, you could probably use one to be a centerpiece of a package for Gaudreau. I just random idea, because I'm just who are the top 2 centers right now? The 1-2 punch, you could do something like that.
Oh my God. Okay.
Or, even Colorado. But the thing is, I think they need a center depth more than they need another winger.
Oh, that would be
because the money works. I think the money works. Actually, no. I think I'll change my mind. Colorado, because they have Alex Newhook, they have Martin Kaut, they have Tyson Mills. Yeah, they have a bunch of guys where
Connor Timmins.
Yeah, they could. they could just go like, hey, you want these prospects and like take these guys.
I
But I
mean,
don't know if Calgary's
yeah.
in that situation right now. I think they still want to get proven talent for someone like Goudreau.
Listen, if and I've completely made these rumors up. They weren't even connected at all. I just said they're looking at Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They're interested also in trading Johnny Gaudreau. Hey, like that there could be a deal that somehow could work.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that no matter what, if that trade happens, Oliver Ekman, the Calgary Flames win that trade because everyone's talking as if OEL needs some new scenery, and that guy's gonna blossom. And I think, considering what the hell is going on in Calgary in terms of, listen, they're losing like half their defense are UFAs,
Mm-hmm.
right? They obviously have Hannafin, they have Giordano, they have Rasmus Anderson, but like Hammonick's a UFA, Brody's a UFA. They brought in Forbort, they brought in Gustafson. Both those guys are UFAs. Bringing in a guy like OEL would be a hell of a signing, and I think it takes some pressure off of Mark Giordano.
I think so too. Like, we always talk about the late bloomers, but this guy, I think he reached a certain point where like, this guy's what, almost 37,
Yeah,
that it's he's not gonna play like that 40-minute game anymore
no,
or anything like that. I think that they have to kind of get more help on that if they still want to contend. They still want to be competent team. They go with a trade like someone like OEL, not like my hypothetical things of like Colorado and Edmonton. I just kind of thought of, I don't know, I just thought of like a Phil Kessel situation like that where he kind of goes to a team and he doesn't be the focal point anymore. But I don't know, he's still young. We'll see. But
he is still young.
in terms of that, I think that Calgary really does have to make a big push this time around. They can't. I don't think they go back next season and they kind of show the same core this time because
No,
it's just been so disappointing.
listen, and I think this is an important point. I don't think you're trading Goudreau or Monahan because I'm just assuming those two guys are the kind of names that are out there. You don't trade those guys just to trade them. Like if there's a deal out there that seems to work, I think you do it. Like I don't think you just trade Goudreau for picks and prospects. Like you'll want to bring in someone, and I think for Calgary they want to bolster their defense. Like there's definitely a trade out there where you can get a decent defenseman for Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah.
Um, and listen, it's the same argument I have with William Nylander. Like you're not trading William Nylander just for the fun of it. You're trading William Nylander to bring in someone reliable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Before we move on, we should talk about Jeff Ward. I believe CJ brought it up on headlines last night that it's more and more likely that Jeff Ward will stay on as head coach of the permanent head coach of the Calgary Flames, and I want to know what you think about that.
I think it just kind of consistency there for the Flames. He did pretty well coming in for Bill Peters, and I think he's a guy that if there's been kind of that conversation already that they want him to be the permanent coach, he's the kind of guy where I look at his lineups and he wasn't afraid to kind of move things around, especially when the team was struggling, and
Right.
the players trusted him with that. Like they were thrusted into this new role where maybe Sean Monahan's not going to be on the top line, or Johnny Gaudreau's not going to be with Sean Monahan, and the way he's been able to kind of like fix things around and kind of use the talent in different ways kind of speaks volumes to a coach that's willing, he's willing to win no matter what like the slumps kind of showed. And if he's a guy that could kind of ride the ship as it is now, then I think it's a good signing.
Do you think there's any? Well, I believe. No, I closed the tweet, but I believe Calgary was one of the teams who had cut some salary for staff. Do you think that there's any thought of, listen, Jeff Ward is a good option. but he'll be relatively cheap to some of the better options that are out there. Like, let's remember, Bruce Boudreau is still out there. Gerard Gallant is still out there. Peter Laviolette is still out there. Mike Babcock is still out there. Like, yes, one of them is going to get the Washington job, but there are still 3 of those coaches. There has to be some inkling of, hey, we don't want to spend all that money. Let's just use the good option. And it's completely reasonable.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think you kind of go with the guy, in-house for the price point you want instead of going for, the home run of like the really well-known coach. And it's kind of going into the unknown. Like, if hypothetically they get a guy like Gerard Galland on, a pretty pricey deal and it just doesn't work out. Like, it's just another thing for the Flames to kind of think about. And I think where they are now, they just want consistency.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I can't believe I have to say this because I thought this guy would never get a job in the NHL after Michael Russo absolutely just murdered him in his wonderful Athletic article. Paul Fenton is going to be joining the Panthers, I assume, as an assistant GM.
I mean, if John Ferguson Jr. could find a way back, this guy could find a way back.
I mean, listen, it just confirms that there's 200 hockey men, and we're not trying anything new.
The thing is, okay, so I was kind of rough on him with the first time when he got fired because I remember the article saying that he had a feeling about Kevin Fiala, and that has worked out for the while.
He still just had a feeling.
Yeah, it's just funny to say, like, why did you make that trade and getting rid of Mikael Granlund? It's like, I just had a feeling about this guy.
Listen, you can be right about it, but it doesn't mean you made the smart decision at the time. Yeah. Yes, Kevin Fiala was a young guy. It didn't seem like things were very working out well in Nashville. So you trade Mikael Granlund and you bring in Kevin Fiala. And last year it didn't work, but this year it seemed Kevin Fiala was on another level, considering they have no other offensive options. They have Jason Zucker. That's it. They had Jason Zucker before trading him. And who's your best now? Who's your best offensive option?
Jared Spurgeon.
Like, it's the blue line. Yeah, it's Jared Spurgeon and Matt Dumba and Kevin Fiala now. Yeah. Right? So, like, congratulations, you had a feeling. I don't think that's how you make a decision. I don't make decisions based on how I'm feeling. And and the craziest thing that he did, well, other than signing Matt Zuccarello, and I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
But he traded Nino Niederreiter for Victor Rask, who was literally going to be bought out that summer.
Pretty bad.
He did not scout Victor Rask. No one went to scout Victor Rask. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that was really bad asset management there on his part.
Yeah, like, I think, fine, he made some moves that benefited the Wild based off of feelings, apparently.
I think it just didn't, when you're making these type of moves, you try to, like, get them to another level. But I think the way he kind of did, things just kind of settled. They left them where they were. Because,
in the middle of nowhere. That's where they were, right?
This is what I kind of felt like. Where, like, he left the team, and then they had this opportunity to be like, let's get some cap space for now, and gauge where we are with our young guys. Like, they have Jordan Greenway, they have Luke Cunnin, and then you sign Matt Zuccarello to a deal. Like, it just pushes you back to, I guess, cap hell with all of these contracts now. Like, you just added another long-term contract to a guy who's over 30. To another, like, already a huge pile of those kind of contracts.
And then who signed the Jared? The thing, they signed the Jared Spurgeon deal, and I don't know if it was Guerin or Fenton to do that. I'm gonna find out. It didn't make sense to me at the time, because He's going to be what? I think when we did it, he was going to be 31
when it starts.
When it started, and it's 7 years. Are you kidding me?
They must love him.
And you know what? Listen, I guess I should give them the benefit of the doubt, because who the hell would have saw this pandemic coming? It all looked as if, hey, like we're just going to be, the cap's going to be going up. There's going to be no worries.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I can't really give them crap for that. But man, I guess the good thing in this scenario is that he's not a GM. Maybe, like, my understanding is he was kind of good at scouting in that sense. You know, like they did have some pretty good prospects. That's the advantage I see with the Panthers, because we talked about the Panthers. They don't have anyone.
Yeah.
Like Alexander Barkov is going to be a UFA in 2 years.
You think he stays? I don't know. That'd be a huge blunder.
It'd be John Tavares leaving the New York Islanders was huge. I think Alex Barkov leaving the Panthers is bigger than that.
Wow.
Because he is, like, I understand John Tavares was that franchise, but at least they had some guys around him. Like, you look at the team now, like the guys who are thriving are guys who were there when John Tavares was there. Who does Florida have? Like, they're gonna lose one of Hoffman or Dadonov, if not both. Mike Matheson is a scratch.
Yeah.
You have Aaron Ekblad and Keith Yandel. Keith Yandel's not getting any younger.
They have Grigory Denisenko.
They have Sergei Bobrovsky,
who's going to be 33 when Barkov becomes UFA.
The bright light of this organization right now is Spencer Knight.
Yeah. You know, not Askarov level, but, you know, he's good.
Not there yet. Yeah,
not yet.
Not that high. Not that high. But, like, if I'm Barkov, okay, Florida, what – like, I think Bill Zito has his work cut out for him in what am I going to do for Barkov to prove that he should stay?
I think they just need more scorers and more talent, like, everywhere. I think I don't know. It's like an illusion with them. Like, the big contracts kind of masked for the fact that they were not a very good team. That
no,
they didn't fit very well. Like, it reminded me of a Kinder Surprise. Like, I don't know. It's just like maybe like the toy inside are the prospects that we have yet to see. But then, like, what
prospects?
But what we have Spencer Knight, Denisenko. But like what we see, what is known is the chocolate, and that is Huberdeau and Barkov.
Yeah, that's it. Like, if I'm Barkov, and listen, Huberdeau's up the year after. So if I'm Barkov, and in 2 years, I look at what prospects does this team have? Is there any chance this team's getting any better anytime soon? That's what I'm using to say, am I staying or am I not staying? Like, this guy should be winning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he wasn't in Florida, he'd be much more well known. Like, I think we've talked about it. He's probably one of the most, if not the most, underrated player in the league because he's in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not Tampa Bay. I mean the Florida Panthers. Just that team. Everyone knows everyone on Tampa Bay because they're good. Do something. It's the same thing. Arizona and Florida have to do something, or those teams are going to be relocated.
If there's any Coyotes or Panthers fans listening to this, support your team. Get the jersey.
Yeah, please.
Yes, this is the sign you've been looking for. It's just one of those things where it's like, if you don't want your team to relocate, support them.
Yeah. Before we move to the playoffs, we got two trades that happened. The first one, the Minnesota Wild have acquired Nick Bjugstad from the Pittsburgh Penguins for a conditional 2021 seventh round pick.
Wow.
And the condition is Bukestad has to play 70 games next season or gets 35 points and 50% salary retained.
Wow. That's yeah. Man,
This yeah.
I was kind of excited when they got him, to be honest, where the Penguins were kind of getting these guys where I assumed at the time it was going to help them with their core, like Jared McCann and Nick Bustad. Like, they got rid of, like, the Derek Brassard contract. And the way I kind of saw it was they were kind of replenishing their top 9 with this. I think Bustad could have come in and be, that big third-line center for the Penguins. He could have some offensive edge to him, but I think it just didn't work out. I think the injuries got to him. He just never looked like he looked really out of place in the lineup, and it was kind of puzzling for me because this is a young guy that has gone through the developmental system for so long. Like, he was an NCAA guy. The Panthers kind of brought him up slowly, and there were signs that if he's not going to be a top line guy, but he's a guy that could anchor your top 9.
It seems like this deal was really just a cap dump.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I know Nick Bukestad isn't the best player, but a 7th round pick.
Yeah.
Like, you're saving $2 million in cap space. And I think maybe it's more of because I believe he was actually owed more money than his cap. Yeah. His cap hit was 4.1. His base salary for the year was 5.25. So back to what we were talking about before, teams are cutting costs. This is a perfect example of it right here.
Mm-hmm. Just, kind of a weird. I know, like, it's kind of a good story for him going to the Wild. Like, he went to Minnesota Duluth. He's a Minnesota boy.
Yeah.
He could probably find his place there, like, maybe as a third line center, and maybe he'll thrive because, like, the Wild don't have a lot of offense.
They do need another center. Mikko Koivu is, it seemed what we talked about, all but retired or all but not. Well, he won't be playing. It doesn't seem like the Wild are going to be signing him for next season. So listen, Nick Bukestad, I think the injuries, you're right. The injuries got to him. Wasn't working in Pittsburgh. I think he just needs a place to thrive. And you look at what happened to Kevin Fiala.
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing could happen to Nick Bukestad. So we'll see what happens with that one. And I have to bring this trade up, or else Adam will get very mad at me. Joel Edmondson is traded from the Carolina Hurricanes to the Montreal Canadiens for a 5th round pick.
I just thought of when I saw this trade where immediately when Joel Edmondson is traded, another defenseman of, like, the same caliber just quickly replaces him in the Canes lineup. It just...
Yeah. Like, they probably weren't even going to re-sign him.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, I think Bergevin seemed to get some backlash on this trade from what I read on Twitter, because it's like, you're giving up a 5th round pick and you couldn't wait until October 9th.
I personally, I'm okay with it. I remember when Dan Hamhuis, switched teams 3 times before he signed with the Canucks. That was a 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
That was being thrown around for him. And I remember the Penguins did that, and then the Islanders did that for him. And no, the Islanders. Yes, the Islanders did that for him. And the way I kind of see it is that what you're using that 5th round pick for is you could negotiate the term you want and the cap hit you want for a guy that you don't have to kind of compete with other teams right now.
Yeah.
To overpay this guy. And, they could negotiate, there's more time to say, hey, this is the role you'd plead playing, and this is what we could offer you. We'd love for you to sign here. And, honestly, like, a 5th, if it's gone, it's gone.
And they're a team who has loads of draft picks, and when Adam talks about it all the time, how many draft picks these guys have, and I think to give up a fifth really isn't that big of a deal, especially because, okay, you know what, Joel Edmondson maybe didn't have the best of seasons with the Hurricanes, but I argue that he was important to the Blues in that playoff run.
Yeah.
Like, yes, okay, they did have the guy. Obviously, they had Petrangelo and they obviously had Parayko and Bouwmeester, but he was still there. Like,
he's a solid guy. I really like the trade. I think he's quality guy where he's not gonna be your top end guy, but he could fit anywhere in the lineup.
He still played 18 minutes or average 18 minutes of ice time this year, right? So I think that's kind of what the Canadians need, especially on that left side. And I think you got Petrie and you got Weber, who are quality right-handed defensemen, and you just need to put a decent guy next to them. And the question here is, what happened to that left side? And I'll give you some context. There's Sherratt, there's Mete, there's Kulak, there's Alex Romanov, and now there's Joel Edmondson.
Like it.
Who's like, someone is gone.
Adam's not gonna like this, but I think it's Brett Kulak.
So do I.
I think he's the odd man out. I know that Adam likes to praise the Kool-Aid man, but what I kind of feel is that he's kind of played above of what is expected of him simply because of the lack of depth. But when you get Edmondson, who I think is gonna sign with the Canadians, and you have Alex Romanov coming, like, the hype for that guy, I think that Brett Kulak, it just doesn't fit the bill. Like, Ben Sherratt's been okay, but he's just, the consistency is there.
That's the other thing is now we cut Brett Kulak out, but now we're still at four. We're still at four left-handed defensemen, and they said, there's talks of some other things that are going on. Obviously, Montreal testing the market on Philip Deneau and Max Domi. Like, and I don't think Adam would agree with me on this one. What are the chances that they look at moving Victor Mete?
Oh, that's a dicey one right there. I think that if a team is willing to kind of give them another similar forward of that age, then I think it could work, like a 1-for-1 in that situation. But I think Mete is a guy where I think he's not the best two-way guy, but he's someone that could still develop into like a solid piece long term.
Yeah.
He could probably get the most value out of them, but I think, in my opinion, I don't think they should move him. I think they should still focus on what they're going to do with that whole forward situation.
The reason, like, there's two things that are going through my mind right now. Number one is that they're going to move a couple pieces, a couple defensemen, or they don't. This is kind of insurance that if Alex Romanov doesn't necessarily work out at the beginning of the season and they want to send him down to the AHL, because we've all been assuming that Romanov's going to play on the bottom pair next season. And listen, we don't know if it's going to work out. Like, whatever happens obviously happens. And I feel like, hey, if Romanov doesn't work out, at least we still have a guy like Joel Edmondson. Like, it's not like our left side is god awful if Alex Romanov doesn't work out. So I think maybe the more I sit here and the more I talk about this trade, the more I'm starting to think that maybe that the Canadians did this as some type of insurance policy if Romanov doesn't work out at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that as well. Edmondson, just like, what we said, the consistency guy that, what you're kind of getting with him. He's a kind of bread and butter type of guy. I don't know why I keep comparing people to food right now. Same thing with the Kinder Surprise and the Florida Panthers. But the way I see Mete in this new situation on the left side is it's kind of like a Travis Dermott situation for me, where he's at a point now in his career where we're gonna say, okay, prove to me that you fit in this lineup, that you could fit somewhere and kind of be someone where we're not gonna give you sometimes the preferred position in the lineup you want, but we want to see if you can adapt and see if that you're part of the future.
For sure. I mean, it seems like a minor trade, but when Adam eventually comes on, I think we'll most definitely
When he
bring
comes
it
on,
up.
is Joel Vincent going to be a Canadian, or is he happens if he decides to sign somewhere
We'll
else?
talk it
Yeah,
about it a month and a half after the trade happens.
yeah.
Um, what do you think about the Philip Deneau and Max Domi situation?
Um, the way this is my personal opinion, but the way I see it is Deneau has just gotten used to playing top line minutes because of the lack of depth on that team, and I think that if there's that willingness for him to kind of go down the lineup, then all is great. But if the Canadians want to take that next step, I don't see him being your first line center, and I don't even see him being your second line center if the young guys continue to develop.
Yeah.
But he's the kind of guy where it's as of right now, it's like an Anthony Cirelli situation where just because of the depth, you're not going to always be. There might be some lineup changes here and there. Well, you're still under the top 6, but you're still be part of that really strong top 9. But his demands kind of to be the top guy. It's just like the Canadians are going to be stuck at where they are if he stays the top line center. For Max Domi, I think he just trade him at this point. I think you find something for him because I just don't think he fits.
Right. Because you have the thing I go through is, and I brought this up with Adam before, is Kotkaniemi and are they ready for full 82 game top 6 minutes? That's why I'm like, okay, do you really trade Philip Deneau? Because let's say Suzuki and Kotkaniemi, one of them aren't ready for top 6 minutes. You can easily slide Philip Deneau into that position and it won't be an issue. So, and he's reliable. He can be that shutdown guy. The question I still have is what is Max Domi?
Yeah, like I think you kind of at the situation too. You go with what you know and what's been proven, and I think that's Phil Deneau. And with Max Domi, like I think the biggest thing for me was when he was out of the top 6, and they had to play him on the 4th line in the playoffs to make sure they get the full value of him at the center position. I think at that point, that's when I realized that he just didn't fit with this team moving forward. Like if you can't play him in crunch time, then when are you going to play him at center?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's going to be like, listen, Marc Bergevin is not done this offseason. He brought in Jake Allen. He fixed the need. Brought in another left-handed defenseman. Not necessarily the type of move that I would have thought of him making for that left side, but he still kind of fixed it. And now we're going to see what he does with Max Domi. It's going to be quite an interesting offseason for the Montreal Canadiens. Should we look at the playoffs now?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to start with the East or the West?
We'll start with the East. I don't know.
Okay. What do you think of, because this is kind of unconventional, the Tampa Bay Lightning playing with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen?
It's pretty unique. I think the Devils did that one year when, I think it was out of need that I can't remember. I think it was Peter Harold, where one day you'll see him play. It's one of the Lou Lamoriello undrafted signee guys. Peter Harold. I remember there used to be a Twitter thing where it's like Peter Harold is okay, and it was like a fan Twitter page for him. But anyways, I remember where you'd see one day he's playing defense and the next day he's playing forward. I think they're just kind of doing this unconventional thing simply because they want to see what kind of works with the matchups, and they've been kind of hit with a lot of injuries lately as well.
So it sounds like he's the new Mark or the old Mark Pysyk.
Yeah.
who scores the hat tricks as a forward and plays the right side on defense. Um, I still can't believe that happened. Sorry, I got
It's
myself
like Brent
lost.
Burns Jr.
um, what did you think of the Alex Killorn suspension?
It was okay. I don't know. I think like it's I don't know. It didn't like sit well with me. I can understand why it kind of happened, but I don't know. It just the suspensions right now are I think what we've been saying, or like player safety. It's so hard to really understand like what their standard is for
Yeah,
it, and for me, I guess it's kind of inconclusive. How about you?
yeah. I look at how they compare regular season games to the playoff games, and I'm like, okay, like I guess I'll deal with the 1 game suspension, knowing that it's 3 regular season games. I guess like it was. I think it was a little bit dirty, whatever, but
It surprised me.
he's
Someone like Alex Killorn.
yeah, it surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think he serves the game, and I think they're playing again tonight, and actually, the time of recording, they're playing in an hour and 15 minutes. So we'll see what happens when he comes back. Now the Lightning are up 2-1, and it's a very different series than Game 1, right?
Yeah.
Game 1 they got they got beat the Islanders
Yeah.
8-2. Good God. And now it seems like they're getting like the Islanders kind of woke up. And you know what? Hey, maybe they were tired. I'm not gonna hop off the idea that I don't even if you're tired, you don't lose 8-2.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's
Bubble
acceptable.
fatigue.
I don't think it's it's an acceptable thing to say, and I think they're kind of going back. Well, other than Game 3 where it was 5-3, like Game 2 was literally a 2-1 game. And if the Lightning win, do the Islanders look back at Game 2 and say, "Man, we should have won that game, or we should have at least gotten that game to overtime"? With Kucherov scoring with 9 seconds left.
Yeah, that was pretty dicey. That's something I think you're gonna kind of look on. I think Varlamov should have made that save. I think it was a pretty savable shot. Um, just yeah, that overall collapse of it was a close game, but you couldn't kind of close it out and try to force overtime. I
Right.
think that's something you kind of really do look back on. But at the same time too, like with Game 3, like I don't know what happened to the Lightning there, where it was a different rhythm for them that the Islanders managed to get 5 goals. They managed to kind of play at a different pace. I think that they weren't as conservative as they were in game 2, and because game 1 is a different story completely. So
Yeah.
I think the series really started in game 2. So
Yeah.
I think it's comes down to today. Like what kind of Lightning team are you gonna have? Are you going to match up with them defensively, or are you going to just let the offensive guys kind of roll out again?
Right. And I think I don't know if we necessarily talked about this before, but I think for me, I give a bit of an advantage to Tampa because they've played teams like the Islanders before, right? You play Columbus. Columbus play is very similar to the Islanders. Now they don't have the scoring power, the same type of scoring that the Islanders do.
Yeah.
You look at Boston, but now Boston's a little bit different because they do have that scoring power. Just it wasn't on for that series apparently. So I think I give the Islanders a bit of, hey, we've played these types of teams before, where I don't necessarily think that the Islanders have played a team like Tampa, because I think Tampa's very, very unique. And they play that Western Conference style of hockey with the Eastern scoring touch.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna add this as a random metaphor,
Okay.
hopefully because Adam's gonna be listening to this. But this
Okay.
reminds me of the Lightning are like, we're not gonna get dismantled again from a team with lesser offensive players who play a tight defensive game. So it reminds me of like the high ground of the Columbus Blue Jackets beating them last year,
Okay.
and it just this year the way the Lightning's been against Columbus, how they've been against the Islanders is like
Yeah,
Return of the Jedi, where
I do.
Luke goes up on the banister part in the Emperor's throne room, and then just
Okay.
Darth Vader is like just throws his lightsaber at him. I think it's that approach where it's like we're not gonna fall for this again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I felt.
I'll take your metaphor. I'll take your
Yeah.
metaphor. Um, well, I guess John Cooper. I just read this tweet. I'm talking about playing Braden Point. Obviously, didn't play Game 3. How big of a miss would Braden Point be if he's out like for the rest of the series?
I think that's huge. I think that just what we talked about, it cuts away at that center depth that they've drafted so well to kind of like foster, and now the way that they're going to be is that they're still going to have like the juggernauts here and there. Like you're not going to have Hedman, they're still going to have Kucherov, but it just
Right.
I don't know. It's just like it's like the heart of that lineup, like not like their center depth. They're already missing Stamkos,
Which is
so
I'd
which is already
argue
huge.
a big loss, and it seems like they haven't missed a step.
Yeah. So it's interesting to kind of see that how are things going to unfold, but the way the games are, like they cannot rush Braden Point back because
Oh, we lost Daniel. Okay, we are back. Little
yes,
technical issues, but we're good now. We're good now. Before you disconnected, you were talking about Braden Point, and what it would mean for the Lightning to lose Braden Point.
I think it's huge. I've talked about before, like that center depth they kind of have there. That's really drives their lineup, and to lose, they already lost Stamkos. Looks like they didn't miss a step, but now you lose a Braden Point. It's like, okay, now suddenly this is a team that still has the elite players everywhere they are. Like they have that defense, but now you're kind of losing. You're losing something there, and I think like Kucherov could do something. They have the other bottom guys that could do something, but it's just something that if the Islanders were to pull off an upset here, that would be a storyline for sure. Saying they lost point, the Islanders took advantage of that.
For sure, and he missed Game 3. It's not confirmed that he's missing Game 4 now. I believe he was skating with the team during practice yesterday or this morning. So we'll see. We'll see about that. Now let's move on to the West. The last thing we have to talk about before we end the episode. How are we at this point that it's 3-1 Dallas? Now listen, Dallas is a good team.
They are.
But
there's
who
not
the
as
hell
fun.
expected this? Yeah, like who expected? I made the argument that Vegas was probably one of the deepest teams in the West, if not the deepest. Especially having Leonard and Fleury as their 1-2, and having probably the deepest forward core in the West. I think their only weakness would be their defense compared to the likes of St. Louis. But their forwards aren't showing up in terms of scoring.
No.
That is my biggest concern with this team right now. Like I have it up right here. These are the guys who have scored a goal. Thomas Nosek, who I believe is injured. Alec Martinez, Shea Theodore, Mark Stone, William Karlsson, and Paul Stastny. There's some guys who should be putting up goals who aren't. Smith, Pacioretty, Marchessault, Alex Tuck. Where are those guys? Would be
I
my
think,
yeah.
yeah, it's been a huge, it's been a defensive series, really tight series that I don't know. They're not performing well. Like I know, like Dobin has stolen a few shots here and there, but you know what they've been able to do with like cycling through it, it just hasn't been, I guess, like the same enthusiasm they had in the other series, that they haven't been able to kind of play their game they wanted to. And when these things keep going down to the wire, it seems like they just can't close it out. Like they always, like, they would let in that like late goal and then they could just never recover.
Yeah, and you brought up Anton Hudobin, and I think that guy has been phenomenal for the Stars. He's a UFA at the end of this year. That guy is going to command. I don't know, maybe not in term, but I think that guy is making more money than we expected at the beginning of the season, for
Maybe he's
sure.
an Edmonton guy. We never know.
Maybe, maybe he's an Edmonton guy. Now, what the obviously I think if I asked you what does Dallas have to do to win the series, what would your answer be?
Just keep playing their game. I think
Right, right, right.
that's what I could just kind of think of, like, where they've been able to find that balance between like their lineup of these guys contributing, but at the same time, like, they're not letting the game get away from them. They're letting the Knights kind of like adapt to their type of game, and they're kind of just going with it. I think Dallas has finally found that consistency that this whole year we talked about. Like, they don't have it.
Now, two questions about the Golden Knights. Number one, what does the team have to do differently to come back from this deficit? And number two, if you are Pete DeBoer, who are you starting tomorrow night?
My heart says Fleury, but right now I'm still gonna go with Robert Leonard. He's the guy who's game tested right now. He's been their guy throughout it all. It's not his fault they're not scoring.
That's true. Yeah.
I think in terms of the forwards, they just have to remember themselves in a way. Like, they need to kind of dial it up. Like, these are the guys where you brought them in to be these pieces that could get you deep into the playoffs. And if they want to take that next step, if they want to make a comeback, which is, I believe, entirely possible. Like, no, they're not getting blown out in these games. They just need to play their game properly. Like, the Golden Knights need to wake up offensively.
Do you think there's, like, obviously you look at the end of game three, and it seemed like Robin Leonard might have tweaked something going into overtime. And then last night, it seemed like something was wrong with Robin Leonard. Is there any chance that Robin Leonard has some type of injury and he's still playing?
There's always that possibility, like that those little playoff things that players tend to not disclose later on. We're like, hey, I remember Jeff Carter after 2000. It's like, hey, by the way, I played with a broken foot.
Patrice.
Yeah,
Oh,
Patrice Bergeron.
I had a punctured lung. Okay,
yeah,
good.
Okay, yeah,
good.
But I don't know. It just, every time we go back to that goalie situation, it just, I don't know what you would do with this. I don't know what you would do, because, like, if you start Leonard and he actually is injured, you really risk that. No, like, not just the win, but also risk him. And then if you have, like, Fleury come in and, like, he loses, it's just gonna be another media thing. Like, oh, should have gotten Robert Leonard.
Yeah, 100%. Now, you sent me a message last night. I didn't even realize it happened, that Alex Tuck cross-checked Corey Perry. So he's now officially not a friend of the show.
Yeah, Adam will think otherwise, but he's not here to say Corey Perry is not a friend of the show.
What do you think of the cross-check?
I don't know. It laid him flat. It laid him pretty flat. Like, they're both skating into opposite directions. That it was kind of a big hit. I joke that Alex Tuck's not a friend of the show, but I know it wasn't like it wasn't malicious in any way. He didn't try to in here and there. But, like, he didn't try to like it was a statement hit.
Yeah,
but it wasn't to the head, so at least that was okay.
I
The
have
body
more.
check.
Yeah, like I have more of an issue that so he didn't have Corey Perry most definitely did not have a puck and have the puck, and he was standing. That this happened very close by to a referee, and there was no call. Like, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say Alex Tuck should be suspended. No, that's not the case. But it was a cross check,
Yeah.
and the refs didn't call it. And I feel like we're back at this page where like, what the hell? Like, what's the rules? And I understand. You know what? I don't. You know what? I don't understand why it's like this. The whole when it's the playoffs, put the rule book away.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. What's the point of having a rule book?
That's true. I don't know. It's just like those kind of
Between the
things.
months of April to June, I'm allowed to commit crimes, and I don't get penalized. That's what this is saying. That's the exact same. Like it's pretty close.
I think it just, I don't know. It just, in
It
a way, I
doesn't
kind of
make
see it's
sense
like
to me.
let the boys play, but it's at the same time, it's just, yeah, stay
And
consistent with the rules.
it's the rule. Like it's a rule book. Like then let's make a second rule book just for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason the rules are in place. Maybe you should follow them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, last thing before we go. Now, Scott Oak talked to Jim Nill, who is the Dallas Stars general manager, and it seemed like he wants Rick Bowness to come back as head coach, and it seems like he's leaving it up to obviously he's leaving it up to Rick Bowness to decide if he wants to stay or not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think number one, do you think Rick Bowness deserves to be in the permanent head coach? And do you think Rick Bowness stays with the team?
I think from what's happened this year, he's really proven himself. I think taking it away from, like taking the reins from Jim Montgomery has been huge for Dallas. Like what all those things we're kind of saying, like, oh, these are what the stars are. Tyler Sagan's not even playing on the first line as their center. Jamie Benn, what happened to Jamie Benn? But like he's been able to kind of like rally the team together and kind of, you know, make them a contender. Like I never thought I would say this, but the Dallas Stars are a contender. And
They are, yeah.
you know, if you have all these guys coming into their prime, these guys who are in their prime, these guys who Jamie Benn rediscovered himself, rediscovered his prime. You don't mess around with that. I think you bring him back.
Yeah, like the only guy who maybe hasn't performed as we expected is Tyler Sagan. Like that guy, has he played well? Sure. Has he put up the points? Not really.
No.
And I think that's what the biggest issue I have with Tyler Sagan. So that's the only guy I'd like to see more of. But I think Rick Bowness deserves a job, and if I'm Rick Bowness, I think you stay in Dallas. Like let's look like looking at the other teams. Like where are you gonna go to have the same type of opportunity that you'd have in Dallas, or one better? Not many places. Like I think Dallas is a contender. I think they're going to be a contender next year. I think, and it seems like that everything's just gelling with the Dallas Stars in the playoffs. Now, got to make sure they do that in the regular season next year, because it didn't look like this in the regular season this year, back in March.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else. Do you?
I think I'm good. I think final thoughts on the whole thing with the Stars is, for years they've been adding, they've been drafting, they've been okay with drafting. That, this is at a point now where this is what you are looking for.
Yeah.
That keep it together.
Smart decision.
Yes.
Smart decision. Would you like to take it away?
Yeah. So to all our listeners, we love you. First of all, we'll start with that. But also, if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, a subscribe, a 5 stars. But, even if you don't give us the 5 stars, we're going to go back to this. If you don't give us the 5 stars, if you give us less than that, let us know why. And we'll address it. We'll actually address it. We'll
leave a review.
Yeah, leave a review. Tell us, hey, I love this, or I wasn't, you know, I didn't like the Star Wars references, but I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know if that's negotiable. We're still gonna keep those, but yeah, check us out on Instagram,
Yeah.
on YouTube, on Spotify, on Voiced Ed. Thank you again for being our platform, and yeah, we will see you guys next time.
Yep. See you.
Thanks.